Beware, this phone call will be used as evidence. Well, yes, I mean, it's going to be used as actual evidence. In some way, it will be exposed in some manner, way, shape, or form. I'm claiming my end, and you're entitled to claim your end, Svetlana. I already know. I had these phone calls before with my lover, who was in another country. And I didn't know at the time they recorded our phone calls, and then they used them to develop weapons paradigms. Well, I'm sure they might call them security products, right? Well, don't worry. I have all of the law. I know when the changes happen. I know the codes. Yes, I know. It's backing something very, very significant. Or rather, maybe it's backed by something very significant. I mean, they'll figure this out, right? Soon as they decide on an asking price, right? I mean, they never really tell you. I have this information here, and I think it's relevant to you. This call is going to be in two parts because I'm going to have to check some other information online. Yes, well, I'm reading this article that is identifying a visit that Hillary Clinton took to Russia, and I think it might be of concern to you. It says here in Tokyo, Yeltsin thanked Clinton for the equipment, and Operation Provide Hope went into action. Bloodshed and upheaval notwithstanding, by the end of October, 400 Sealand vans had arrived safely in Moscow with $38 million worth of equipment. Well, this is ironic, right? Do you remember what Barack Obama's campaign slogan was? Right. He was the president of hope. And those 400 vans, were they white vans? See, I know. I've seen my own white van. Right. Yes, I did. In February of 2017, right around the time he would have been sending something to the publication they said he used to be the editor of, right? Right. $38 million. It just so happens right now I'm owed a 38 on my own birth certificate. It's true. They tried to transpose it to an 83, but I've covered that today. Twice. I've double indemnified it, I suppose you could say. Twice today. Yes, I did. So today's a good day to be bringing these matters up. Well, here's my concern. That specific thank you and acknowledgement happened in Tokyo, which brings up a point. On March of 2011, see, my concern was that there was all kinds of foreknowledge about Estonia before it got to Fukushima. I think now it's understood on another level that I was not previously apprised of. Yes, right? And we're talking about 400. And somebody has been doing this thing with the old people, the old people. You know, the whole having sex is as easy as drinking a glass of water. I know, and that's become the slogan for their entire workers' rights movement. Yeah, nobody read anything else she wrote, it seems. They didn't read anything else she wrote. That's all that they read, it seems. So they have the completely wrong idea, just like Gurley. Yeah, they didn't really want Gurley. They wanted Flynn. Yeah. And because they didn't actually read it and they didn't have any intention of being sincere with it, it's just some numbers metric flip that some people came up in some sort of, I don't know, really. They wouldn't let me have access to that level of language tutorials. Yeah. Well, the thing is that after Japan, it was supposed to get somewhere else. But they cut it off in Japan because they wanted it to go somewhere it wasn't supposed to go. And we have a big problem now because they've done it again. They did it again. Yeah, I know. They did it again. And see, this is the situation I'm concerned about. It seems that what they did is there was a specific kind of characterization of what was supposed to be the Soviet pension scheme, or rather, what women in the new economy were supposed to expect of the titillation of their possibilities. Well, that's apparently what they've swapped here. That what they've swapped is a period of time where they're going to completely re engineer the economy and then replace workers, right? They're doing that workers' replacement program, and the people who are supposed to be allowed to get jobs are ones that have been recruited as Soviets. Yeah. And my whole thing is A, was it a slander to begin with? And B, well, then it brings up some other points, right? And if you're talking about it as a hot Latino, then it's just kind of scintillating. It's the kind of thing you put in a telenovela. There's no big deal. People understand. Scandal's a good thing. That's how it translates, or that's how they want it to translate. And that's why they want us all to get on board with this Latino project. Yes, it's just like what they did with Yiddish. Well, you were only allowed to go through with learning Yiddish or having any sort of experience with those languages if you understood the specific characterization of the language itself before you even began to study. That's why people like me still sound like a peasant. I don't have any problem with peasants, honestly. Well, here's the thing, Svetlana. You need to tell me, who was the first person you had sex with? Were you working for them? Were they a member of the military? Were they in your age range? Were they somebody of a different racial or ethnic background? Because let me tell you something. I'm going to go through an inventory right here. My first sexual encounter was when I was 15 years old with a man who was an enlisted member of the United States military and who, by the way, was on the Marine Corps wrestling team. Yes, well, I had asked him if he would show me how to wrestle. I wanted to learn how to wrestle. He wanted something else. He ended up taking me into his barracks aboard a military combat command. Nobody in the barracks, at the desk, or anybody else seemed to have a problem with a Marine taking a 15-year-old girl into his barracks bedroom. Yeah, well, it seems now, all these years later, that was their Joan of Arc outlay. That I'm supposed to see it as if I was some young woman filled with spirit, conquering the enemy's stronghold. Yeah, the problem is they play too much of this bitch down mulatto domestic worker Yellow Rose scheme when the true story of Yellow Rose is that she survived the fucking Alamo and was able to get to the Texans with the recon they needed to defeat the fucking Mexican army. So whatever they tried to do on my flip didn't work out because I wasn't going to be their hooker in the tent playing with Santa Ana while everybody else set fire to the stockpiles. Right. So now what they want is for me to relinquish that and understand that wasn't really my destiny. I think I'm supposed to be Mother Mary of the, queer persuasion because all that's left for me is some sort of transgendered identity. But the point of the matter is, I very well could have gone into the military. The problem, however, may be that I was not eligible to go into the military if the only role for a woman in the military was to engage in Soviet pension schemes, right? So the question is, were you set up to be the Yellow Rose? Because I don't think they intend to give you Joan of Arc. Yeah. Well, Yellow Rose is a fraud. A story is not even true. It's not even a true story. And the thing is that actually has a very substantial ramification. It's not a true story. It's completely fucking racist. And the actual true story means that there's a woman who refused the Mexican education deal. See, this is the problem that these women and men in Texas that call themselves educators are having. They want to play Yellow Rose in the tent, diverting whoever it is so that somebody else can come in and get the loot and then they can share in it later. That's a complete fabrication. Because what happened was the Mexicans offered their education plan to the sole survivor and her child, and she said she'd rather walk with her child than accept their education. Yeah, well, see, that's the actual history. Anything else in that other lineage is completely false. And I don't think it's the kind of thing that Roman slavers alone should be able to play little boudoir games with and then subject the rest of us to and get away with it. And that's kind of the problem we're having. Because somebody has already done this thing where they've gotten a big inventory on every single sexual encounter and sex partner we ever had and set up actual finance portfolios with it. So let me tell you what happened. Around the time they tried to swap my Joan of Arc out for their Yellow Rose, I happened to get the real story of Yellow Rose, but they don't want to acknowledge that. I didn't know that's what they were doing. Right before they kidnapped me, I found the book. I found the book on the story of Yellow Rose. And they were pissed because they had set up some sort of Masonic ritual where they wanted me to be Santa Anna. I was supposed to be Santa Anna storming the compound. And when I found that book the next day, I was kidnapped. Yeah, I know it's a little tidbit. I don't know how you put that in a statement of facts for your legal filing or your petition. They had a book at the center. They had a bunch of books at the center, by the way. That's where I found out that information on those Gazprom bonds. Yeah, well, they had a book there. That was a history book. And it talked about Yellow Rose. And as soon as I found that book, they were pissed. I was supposed to be Santa Anna. I wasn't supposed to be Yellow Rose. And then all of a sudden, well, I mean, the story of Yellow Rose changed. Yeah. So the question is, have they done something similar over there? You know, there was this article in 2019 about how there was this controversy because this city in the former Czechoslovakia was trying to take down this statue of a former Soviet war commander. And there was this thing, apparently there's some old Soviet law that when a public monument is decommissioned, it doesn't actually belong to the locality. It belongs to the people through the state. You know, there was some discussion about taking that statue and returning it to Russia if they were going to determine that they didn't want it on public display, right? So the question is something similar going on over there? Is there some sort of revisionist rehistoricizing, including one that is prioritizing the philandering impulses of people that thought they were better than the rest of us because they had specialized linguistic programming regimes set up in order to cover up for their crimes that they expected us to provide insurance on? Well, let me tell you what ended up happening, Svetlana, because I have an anticipation this is what they're expecting for you or anybody else that they're going to try to call their new, I don't know, new model of women in leadership. As soon as that 2016 election season went down, right? I got beaten the night of the election. I survived. But after that, there were 3 demographics I was supposed to fuck, and I haven't fucked any of them. A white man over the age of 60 who has a specific Texas bloodline and usually likes to tell you something about how he has some past experience with cocaine. Yeah, I think that's their long-term deal, right? The big score. But there's things you have to do in the meantime. You have to get a black man in security, preferably an actual police officer. Or if you can't get a black cop, then get a black security guard. And then you need to get some Hispanic or Latino man, a man with a Spanish surname, who spent at least 20, usually 24 years in jail for a capital offense. But even though he did actually murder that guy, he came to Jesus in jail, and now he's a holy man, and he's very, very sweet to you. But you're supposed to have sex with them. And if you say no, then at some point, well, you get downgraded. And then every once in a while, they throw a young man below the age of consent at you because your little Joan of Arc 15-year-old is supposed to be a 15-year-old black boy that somehow is supposed to get into something comparable. See, this is what they set up on me on the flip. And apparently they've determined after 5 years, I'm just not performing what they wanted. It was defaulted. So if they're doing some debt default swap, that's what they're swapping to you. My question is, what the fuck about your life are they swapping to me? Because if it's that USAID partnership program paired with that State Department scholarship fund, including for teenagers, oh, honey, we're in a big, big, big problem, right? Because all of that shit was laundered through the DOD first. Yeah, and I'm not going to let them off the hook because those DOD appropriations were for CBRN. And I got my whole ass kicked here because somebody used my life as a loan on obligations set up with the Soviet Union around disposal of CBRN. Yeah, they just didn't dispose of it. All they did was try to recirculate it in order to sabotage people that did not agree with their political ideations. I know. If we psychopathologize it, it's called ideation. I do understand that the deviation has its merit as well, but I don't know if that was included in your package that they're trying to swap to me. You understand? So I'm not trying to be confused here. I'll be forthcoming with you. I think all of the other things that happened in between, well, I'm going to have to go check in with those deals that were brokered through Japan to Honduras before I can get back to you on that. But somewhere between my 15-year-old ass and my, what was I, 40-year-old ass, getting set up to hedge for somebody else's political campaign. Well, that stuff I don't think is as relevant now, right? They've already panned that out. That's already been appropriated. That's already been redistributed. It's already gotten certain people actually elected to president, right? How many presidents right fucking now are having to deal with all kinds of personal responsibility issues based upon what happened between when I was 15 and 35. The point of the matter is, that's supposed to be left off, right? Well, they've had 35 years to acknowledge where they got it and who the original down payments were brokered on. They haven't. We got to deal with what we got now. I'm not taking any 15-year-olds. We're not resetting. But you got to understand, there's a triptych that they're expecting you to work one way or another. I think if your husband's in jail, they might try to hook it up real nice and sweet, especially over there. You know the mystique about men from your part of the world that spent 24 years in jail? Oh, I know somebody thinks they're very, very valuable. Maybe more valuable than us. But the problem is they can't get whatever the fuck they thought they were due without us. They're going to have to find a way to make themselves relevant somehow. Please communicate as quickly as possible whatever it is you've had going on that I'm supposed to be attending to, because they've turned out on whatever their expectations were of my performance here, and we're all ready to move on. I'll get back to you tomorrow about part 2.